Okay, this is Michael from Blue Sky Bio. I'd like to thank everybody who's joining us for today's webinar presentation. Thank you for taking time out of your busy daytime schedules, out of your lunch break, and logging in to the webinar presentation. This is the second presentation of a webinar series that we started last week. There's going to be a variety of different presentations given on a lot of different subjects connected to implant placement and guided surgery. We have a fantastic lineup of presenters. The webinar schedule is publicized on our website, and we send out email newsletters as well. Stay tuned for upcoming webinar presentations, and we highly encourage that you take advantage of those presentations. If you have questions during the webinar, please enter them into the live chat box to the right of the viewing screen. And please make sure to enter your details into the webinar attendance form so that we can send you the CE credit. The focus of today's presentation is going to be new features in Blue Sky Plan. We're going to be demonstrating in the software the new wizard functionality and the new support for the fully guided surgical kit in the software. While we do that, we're going to be going over some basic functionality in the software for users that might be new to the software. We're going to discuss other improvements and new functionality in the software, such as the vertical tangential view, the Brennis virtual tooth library. We've added in additional virtual teeth courtesy of Dr. Brennis, who sent us the library. We've added in the capability of saving the default density threshold, and we're going to demonstrate all of this in a few minutes. We've improved the BigBox.com integration. We've, as of today actually, integrated the functionality that all new users, when they license the software, are going to be getting 2 free STL exports that they could use for training for their first cases to get up and running. And we've improved the widget that allows the user to manipulate implants and other surfaces in Blue Sky Plan. So we're going to look at a presentation for a couple minutes, discuss some of the basic concepts and background information so that when we go into the software, we'll have a better understanding of what's going on. For those of you who may not yet have downloaded the software, please go to blueskybio.com and download the software. Blue Sky Plan is an advanced treatment planning software for computer-guided surgery. It has a lot of great functionality in it. It's distributed free of charge. You can put on as many computers as you like. There is a per case fee to export the completed design surgical guide to an STL file that ranges between $10 and $20. Other than that, the software is free of charge. Plan as many computers as you like. We come out with upgrades during the year, and we distribute them as well. There's a PC version and a Mac version, so you could go ahead and download either one. Now, just a little bit of background. This is a slide that I used in a different presentation, but it's important to understand where we've gotten with guided surgery. So if you look at the superhighway section, which is the rightmost section that I described for what we've reached in terms of surgical guide fabrication, we're at the point where everyone can design a surgical guide in the software with no other software necessary. Everyone has the ability to export STL. If you like, you could have your own printer in your office. Otherwise, you could outsource to printing centers. But we've gotten to the point that you only need a CT scanner in order to get to a surgical guide. And you can even invert an impression that you've CT scanned in order to create the surgical guide in the software. And we've also developed a wizard, which makes the whole learning curve and the process flow for treatment planning a case very quick and very easy to use. So we're going to be looking at some of this functionality. And some of the process flows for the wizard and some of the other items that we mentioned. Okay. As I mentioned, the wizard functionality is something that's new. It allows you to go from DICOM to surgical guide in really a matter of minutes. And again, the CT scanning protocol, for most cases, except the mostly edentulous or fully edentulous cases, you really don't need a scan appliance, you don't need an optical scan, and we're going to demonstrate that process flow in the wizard as well. So the point that we've gotten to with guided surgery today is that you can either print your own surgical guides for around $25 in a matter of hours, doing the whole process in a matter of hours. You can outsource the printing after you've designed the surgical guide, in which case your surgical guide costs will come out to around $60 or $70, depending on how many implants you're placing. And of course, there's the option of working with a list of very capable labs that provide great service and turnaround time, and they could get you the surgical guide usually in a matter of days. The reason I included this, again, is to make sure that we know where we're supposed to be today and where we have gotten to and what the capabilities are. Once we know what our destination is, we can now go through the process of how to do these different process flows in the software. No matter what process flow you're using in the software to make a surgical guide, it comes down to three components. You need to treatment plan, you need to design the surgical guide, and the middle step, I call the defined scan. You need to import something else in addition to the patient scan. The reason you need to do that is because a CT scan has different density thresholds, it might have scatter in the CT scan. We need something that's clearly defined that we can import into the software in order to create the surgical guide. And the capabilities that we've gotten today, and the capabilities that we've now integrated into the wizard process flow, allows us to take advantage of a variety of different defined scans to import. We have the capability to import an STL or an optical model scan, which is an STL file of a model. You can import a CT scan of a model as well, so you don't even need to optically scan the model. You can use a CT scanner, or you could even import a CT scan of an impression, convert it directly in the software, and use that to make the surgical guide. So the defined scan is some of the functionality we're going to be looking at in the wizard, and the new capabilities that we have connected to that to allow the quickest process flow from a DICOM, from a CT scanner to a surgical guide as possible. Now, in terms of the fully guided Kela Surgical Kit, which is something else we're going to take a look at in the software, this was recently released by Blue Sky Bio. And the advantages of it, it allows sequential drilling, both in terms of depth and in terms of width, and it allows implant placement via the surgical guide. So we now have a kit available on our website. And what you can notice is that the non-drilling part of the drill, right below the drill stop, on all the drills is the same width. So there's no key involved. There's no key or handle involved. You simply have the master metal cylinder in the surgical guide, and then you could go ahead and do the sequential drilling, and at the end, pass the implant through the surgical guide. Now, on our website, we have the ability, obviously, to purchase the surgical guide, and you can see that we have two metal cylinders that are available to work with the surgical guide. The top one is completely integrated into the Blue Sky Plan software. And let's just take a look at some of the terms and some of the dimensions, so when we go into the software, we'll have a better understanding. And we'll come back to this later on in the presentation. But what we're seeing is the metal cylinder that's going to be in the surgical guide through which the drill goes. The metal cylinder's complete height is 4 millimeters. Let's look at the one on the left first. The complete height is 4 millimeters. The top 0.5 millimeter is a lip. The inside diameter is 5.04 millimeters, and the outside diameter is 5.24. And we're going to see how this affects the settings in the software. When you're using a fully guided surgical kit and the wizard, there's no numbers or calculations that have to be done by the user. Everything is done automatically by the software. A lot of users contact and say, we want to confirm the settings, we want to see how everything works. So this type of information helps you get that understanding. Now, the metal cylinder that's demonstrated on the right side of the screen with the outside diameter of 5.9 millimeters is the same internal diameter, the the same height, the same lip. What varies is the outside diameter. Now, there's some users that are using CEREC components, CEREC surgical guides, and we've created the metal cylinders that if you wanted to use the fully guided surgical kit, and we've created the metal cylinder to be compatible with the guide. You could place the metal cylinder inside, and then you could still use the fully guided surgical kit. So the leftmost metal cylinder is compatible with the CEREC medium, and the rightmost is CEREC large. If you're not a CEREC user, then don't be concerned about that. What you need to know is that the left metal cylinder is the one that you should be ordering. It's the one that's listed on the website, and it's the one that all the settings in the software are pre-programmed and are done automatically. We'll come back to this later on as well. I've also mentioned that we've improved integration for BigBox. BigBox is a HIPAA-compliant file transfer, email, and backup system. It's freemium, meaning that you could use most of the functionality completely at no charge. It is a system developed by Blue Sky Bio. When we saw the need to be able to store, backup, and transfer DICOM images and large digital data and treatment plans, so we've created a solution that allows the user to take advantage of a HIPAA-compliant system in order to do so. And we've improved integration into Blue Sky Plan. We're going to see that as well. But check out biobigbox.com. The registration is just an email address and a password. It can be used mostly at no cost. When you log in, you have a nice interface. I've blocked out some of the email addresses and personal information, but you have a nice interface that gives you tons of functionality about sharing, backing up, uploading, the status of the case, the number of people it's shared with, the number of people who have downloaded it. We're not going to get into BigBox. It's not the point of the webinar presentation, but we're going to take a look at some of the integration into Blue Sky Plan, and go ahead and check it out, biobigbox.com. And for this webinar series, which is in conjunction with BigBox, we've created a coupon code. It appears on the screen, and it offers a 50% discount. If you do take a paid package of BigBox, you can enter BSB 2017 webinars at the checkout, and that will give you a 50% discount, special for this webinar series. Okay, now we've covered a lot of the background information. I'm going to pull up the software, and we're going to take a look at some of the process flows directly in Blue Sky Plan. This is the Blue Sky Plan software. We're currently in normal mode. Normal mode gives us access to the wizard. The wizard, as I mentioned, is great for most cases. If you're doing a case that's mostly or completely edentulous, then the wizard is not built or ideal for that. But all other cases could generally be done through the wizard. So if we go ahead and click on Start Wizard, we now have the ability, this is some of the new features and functionality I mentioned earlier, to select the import type. And depending on what the user is selecting, the wizard will take the user through a different process flow. You can import a model STL, you can import a CT of the model, or you can import the CT of the impression, and we're going to go through the different process flows. In addition, you're able to select the guided surgical kit type. Right now we have Blue Sky Bio direct cut drills, we have the Blue Sky Bio fully guided surgical kit. In the future, we're going to be adding additional guided surgical kits to allow even more users to use the wizard for even more cases. Let's start with the model, with an STL case of a model, an optical scan of a model, and the Blue Sky Bio fully guided surgical kit. If you do switch to direct cut drills, then you have an additional drop-down that asks which handpiece you're using. The reason for that is because different handpieces allow different parts of the drill or different amounts of the drill to come into the drill or to stick out of the handpiece, to come into the handpiece or stick out of the handpiece. And in order to properly control depth, we ask the user which handpiece they're using. If you're using the fully guided surgical kit that has the stop, and therefore the handpiece is irrelevant, then that drop down disappears. So we've selected the import type of an optical scan of a model. We're going to go through the process flow with Blue Sky Bio Fully Guided Surgical Kit, and we press the OK button. The software is asking us to load the DICOM images. For those of you who might be newer to Blue Sky Plan, take note of the different shortcut buttons that you have in the top that take you directly to the different locations on your computer. We're going to navigate to the CT scan. The software does search the subfolders in a particular folder. We'll also search the CD. We're going to go ahead and select the folder with the CT scan. We're going to define our field of view by grabbing and dragging any of these borders inwards. If the patient isn't oriented correctly during the CT, you could use the blue circles with the arrows to reorient the CT scan. Okay, now the wizard comes up automatically on the right-hand side. We see the step-by-step on the right-hand side of the wizard. So we've selected our DICOM folder. Now we have the ability right away to detect the nerves. Now in the software, we have the ability to detect the nerves with a single click. The patient is automatically oriented correctly, and we want to do a single click on the entrance to the mental foramen. We can now see that the nerve has been drawn. The complete nerve has been drawn. If you want to modify the nerve, you could grab and drag any of the nodes along the nerve. Otherwise, if the placement's okay, you go ahead and press next. If it's an uppercase, you just press the maxilla button and it skips the process of selecting the nerve. If you don't want to select the second nerve or it's not relevant, you could just press the next button again in advance. Otherwise, just click. And the nerve, we now see, you can see in the bottom left in the panoramic view that both nerves are now drawn. The software now prompts us to import the STL file, the optical scan. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and you can see that here on the right side, and press the OK button. The screen automatically comes up. You can see the step that we're up to is a line model. The screen that automatically comes up shows us the optical scan of the model. It also shows us the panoramic. So we're aligning a 3D of the model to a 2D of the panoramic, which does help in scatter cases that we're aligning to a 2D view, which doesn't have scatter, has very minimal scatter, compared to a 3D CT scan that might have a larger amount of scatter. What we're going to do now is mark the teeth. This is a very advanced process in terms of the fact that you don't need to mark exact location on a particular tooth. What we're essentially doing is we're tagging the teeth. I recommend tagging every other tooth. That usually guarantees a very good merge, and especially the back teeth on either side helps with an accurate merge. Once we tag and mark the teeth, we do that by holding down the Shift key and the left mouse button. And you also have the ability to undo any of the dots that you placed. Once you've placed the dots, you go ahead and press the next button. And the software is going to do the merge. Now, if the merge comes up and you're not happy with the merge, the fastest and easiest thing to do is just hit the previous button, go back, and add a couple more dots. Okay, you can mark every tooth. Generally, marking every other tooth is more than enough. The merge comes up, and we can confirm we're up to this process, the stage of confirm model alignment. So we could go ahead and look at the cross sections. We could go ahead and look at the axial view. And what we want to see is that the outline of the model is tightly wrapped around the teeth. And we can see here that the merge is quite good. And we simply press the next button to move forward. The point that we're up to now allows us to select the crowns. The way that we're going to treatment plan is by placing a crown and an implant together. Here we have the Brennis Tooth Library, an additional set of virtual teeth, courtesy of Dr. Brennis, and you're able to select which set of teeth you want, with roots, without roots, and use that for the treatment planning. You left-click on the tooth. You can also hold down the Shift key to select several teeth, which we're not going to do in this case because it's a one-implant case, but we'll take a look at that later. And then we're going to press select implant as well. And we're going to choose an implant that we want to place together with the virtual tooth. Now we go ahead and press OK. And we can left click in any view that we have on the screen. I generally like left clicking in the bottom right panoramic view. And the implant and the crown, the virtual tooth, gets dropped together. Now we could go ahead and fine tune the placement in any view. What's important about this step is that whatever modifications you make to the implant or the crown in terms of the placement moves both of the items together. I mentioned regarding the improved widget, you could see that the widget, for users who are familiar with Blue Sky Plan, we've made the circles much more narrow, so it blocks less or doesn't block at all anything that you want to be looking at, and they're just as easy to grab and to manipulate as they were previously. Now we could use all of the views that we have on the computer, on the screen, to go ahead and check the placement of our implant. We could also resize the virtual tooth by grabbing any of these nodes next to the virtual tooth and fine-tuning the placement accordingly. Okay. When we're happy with the placement and the implant and the crown, we can go ahead and click Next. If you want to redo the implant placement or place a different implant, or in general to restart the step that you're on, go ahead and click on the name of the particular step. It will restart the current step and you'll be able to do it again. Let's go ahead and click on Next. We're up to adjust implant positions. Now we could go ahead and move the implant if we wanted to without moving the crown. So any modifications that we make to the implant at this point will not affect the position of the virtual tooth, just the implants. Here we finished our treatment planning. We're up to the stage of creating the curve for the surgical guide. We have the implants. We have this brown cylinder, which is the software guide tube. This is going to be the part of the surgical guide that holds the metal cylinders, the metal tube, and we'll see that very clearly in just a second. What we're doing now is we're holding down the Shift key, and we're using our left mouse button to draw a curve on which the surgical guide is going to be defined. Okay, to rotate, we let go of the Shift key and use the left mouse button. To draw, in general, to draw a curve or to mark dots in the software, you hold down the Shift key and use the left mouse button. We drew the curve, we go on to the next step. Here we're able to edit the placement of the curve. We want to make sure that the line's not crisscrossing, it's continuous, it's smooth, just the way that we want it. And then we go ahead and click the next button. The software is going to fabricate the surgical guide. And here it is on the screen. It's really as simple as that. We could see that the brown tube that we have here is integrated into the surgical guide. The surgical guide is an exact same proper positioning. We have areas cut out around the osteotomy location in order to make sure that there's no interference for the handpiece. It also provides a good viewing window to make sure the surgical guide is properly seated. If we wanted to redo a step or to redraw the curve, you go back, click on the name of the step, and you could redraw the guide. At this point, we're going to go ahead and click on Next. We finished our surgical guide fabrication. It's really as simple as that. And here I need to activate my exports. Let me go ahead and do that quickly. Let me just, while I'm doing this, I'll explain. You could get to the point of designing the surgical guide and doing everything in the surgical guide, in the software, without any need to have STL exports. But in order to export the designed surgical guide, that's what we were talking about earlier, which is the fee of between $10 to $20 a case. And the reason I say it's between $10 to $20 a case is because we have different packages, and the larger the package, the cheaper the per case is. But the most expensive is going to be around $20, and the cheapest is going to be is around $10. And the process of purchasing exports is just what came up earlier. You could go ahead and click the Purchase STL Exports from directly in the software. You select the package that you want, press the Buy button, and the PayPal window opens. You put in your credit card information, your PayPal account, and the software gets activated instantaneously, automatically. Okay, let's see if that took care of what we're doing. Very good. So now I have exports. I'm able to export. Generally, what I recommend is create a patient folder. And you're going to save the case, and you're going to save everything else into the patient folder. So if you don't have one, before you start treatment planning, create a folder for the patient. Here I created one for patient Blue Sky. I'm going to go ahead, I could change the name. Blue Sky Blue. And go ahead and save the case. Now we have other things that the software is going to prompt us to save as well. The software is prompting us to save the surgical guide. We could go ahead and save it again in the same location. Change the name. This is the STL file for the surgical guide. This is what's going to be printed out. I'm going to save the STL file to the same location. And now we have a screen that comes up asking us if we want to send the case or the surgical guide. So if you're not printing it in-house and you want to send either the case or the surgical guide for printing at a lab or printing center, then you can do it very, very easily. And this is the BigBox integration. How is the case being sent? The case is being sent via BigBox. Again, that's the HIPAA-compliant file transfer and backup system. So once you have your BigBox account, you put in your email and your password for your BigBox account, because it's going to be sending via BigBox. And when you send the case via BigBox, you'll also have it saved and backed up there as well. So you can access it really from any location, from anywhere. Now you could send the case. We've put in a list of labs and printing centers. You can just simply select from the drop-down list the lab that you want to send it to. Or if you want to send it not to a lab, you can just click the email address and put in any email address that you want. You could send files via BigBox to anybody with an email address, even if they don't yet have a BigBox account. You could choose if you want to send the exported file, which is the STL of the surgical guide, or you could choose to send the entire Blue Sky plan file. We put in some default information automatically from the case that's going to be included with the files that you're sending via BigBox. You could modify it, and if you're sending it to a lab or a printing center, of course, include any relevant and pertinent information there as well. We're going to press Don't Send Now, but if you do send it, you'll have a progress bar showing up in the bottom left. You could go ahead and continue using the software while the progress bar is advancing. That's not an issue. And it will send the case to the intended recipient. When it's sent, you get a confirmation that the send happened successfully. When it's downloaded, you get a confirmation that the user, the recipient, has downloaded it successfully as well. So BigBox is really a fantastic system. I put up the coupon code earlier. You can use it for free, or you could upgrade to get some more features and functionality and some more storage. The Blue Sky plan and BigBox combination is really fantastic, very powerful together. So yeah, I recommend to check it out. Now, what comes up now is we're saving a report. The software automatically generates a PDF report, drilling report for the particular case that you did. So again, we're going to dump it into the patient's folder, and we're going to save it there. So at the end, we're going to have, so far we've saved the Blue Sky Bio case, we've saved the surgical guide, we're saving the PDF, and we're going to save that there as well. Here, let's open up, this is an example of the drilling report, put some screenshots, some information, drilling depth, parts, all into a nice document. Next, if you press The next button, shopping cart, comes up. The relevant parts for your case are automatically added to the cart. You don't have to be wondering, what parts do I use? How do I order it? If you already have the kit or you already have some of the parts, you could just exit them out and it will be removed from the shopping cart. What comes up now, we finished the wizard process, and although it took a bit longer to go through the explanations, once you do it once or twice, you'll see that the process really takes a couple of minutes. We now have the option of start a new case or close the wizard. We're going to hit start a new case button, and we're going to go through a different process flow. Let's take a look at a model CT case, a CT scan of a model. We discussed earlier that one of the advances and the point that we've gotten to with guided surgery is that you don't even need to optically scan a model. You can CT scan the model, and that would be sufficient. We're going to again take a look using the Blue Sky Bio Fully Guided Surgical Kit. We're going to navigate. We'll go through this a bit quicker now since we've gone through an explanation earlier. And we're going to import the CT scan of the patient. This is an uppercase. We're defining the field of view. We're going to hit maxilla because we're not drawing the nerves. And now we're going straight to the process of importing the CT scan of the model. Here it is. We could change the field of view a bit if we need. And here we see the model in CT or DICOM formats. If we need to change the density threshold, we could do so on the bottom. Now, there are ways of calibrating your CT scanner and checking what the exact correct density threshold is. We're not going to go into now, as there are other webinars and videos that do go into it. But once you have a good density threshold that you've taken note of from your CT scanner, you can right-click on the density threshold slider and click Set as Default. That's also a new feature that we have, that when you load the DICOMs, will automatically come up with the proper threshold. There are two different process flows that different users have done. One is by saving the DICOMs as STL files and then checking the border and how it compares to the 2D views and finding the correct and tightest one. And there's also another process of scanning an impression block that has different indentations and items protruding from it at different density thresholds. The STL file for that block is available, and you could print it and you could use it in your CT scanner one time and check what the correct density threshold is. So these are just two different concepts presented in different webinar presentations. So now we have, again, the CT scan of the model. We can modify the density threshold. Once we do so, we go ahead and click on the next button. And what the software is doing now is it's converting it from a CT to an STL, to a surface in the Blue Sky Plan software. And we're going to be able to use that surface to design our surgical guide. Okay, we now have our model, and similar to the process that we went through before of marking the teeth, we're doing it again now. Quick and easy. Hold down the Shift key, left click on the tooth you want to mark. And then press the next button. Okay, we now have the merge. We can confirm the merge in our different views. We want to see that it's tightly wrapped around the teeth. And we go ahead and press next if we're happy with it. Here again, we're selecting a virtual tooth. We're going to select the implant that it gets placed with as well. Let's choose We now have 6mm implants for the Quattro system. Let's choose an 8 here. And we're going to, once again, place the implant together with the virtual tooth. We're going to fine tune the placement. Any modification that we make in this stage to the implant or the virtual tooth moves both of them together. And again, we could change the size of the virtual tooth if we like, just by grabbing the nodes. And when we're happy with the placement, we go ahead and click on Next. Here we're at the stage where we can move the implant without the virtual tooth. If we want to make any modifications to just the implant, click on Next. And now we're up to drawing the surgical guide. Okay, we hold down the Shift key and click the left mouse button to draw the surgical guide. Click Next. Modify the curve as we like. Want to make sure there are no crisscrosses. The placement meets our specifications. And now we've created the surgical guide. Okay, the next button takes us through the same process of saving the case, saving the surgical guide, asking us if we want to send it via BigBox, creating the report, and that's it. For a time, I'm going to go ahead and go to the third process flow of the impression inversion. Let's close the wizard out, file, close project. I'm not going to save this. And let's go ahead to the third process flow of an impression CT. And we can look at this with our direct cut drills. Doesn't make a difference. We're going to select the relevant handpiece from the drop-down list. And let's take a look at this process flow. Now this is really probably the most streamlined process in the sense that you don't even need to pour up a model. We're going to see how CT scanning the impression allows us to invert it directly in the software and use that to create a surgical guide. So we're going to select the CT scan of the patient. Define the field of view on the patient scan. We're not going to mark any nerves, obviously. And now we're going to select the CT scan of the impression. This process flow was originally done by Dr. Ferguson. A lot of people refer to it as the Ferguson impression inversion technique. And based on his suggestions and suggestions of others as well, we've integrated it into the Blue Sky Plan software. Okay, it seemed, and I imported the patient scan instead of the impression scan. Let's go back here. Okay, this looks much better. Yes, let's skip that step. Impression inversion test case. DICOM impression. Okay, so here is the CT scan of the impression. It is currently still in CT format, so we're able to change the density threshold. We want to make sure that there are no holes in the impression. Generally, when you're creating the impression as well, you want to make sure enough material is being used so that there are no holes when you're creating the impression. If you need to adjust the density threshold, you can use the slider on the bottom. And once you have a proper impression, go ahead and click on the next button. The software is now turning the impression from a CT scan into an STL surface that we can invert and then use for the surgical guide design and fabrication. Okay, so now we have the impression as the STL surface. We're going to draw a curve to define the area that we want to invert. Same process as whenever we draw a curve in the software, we hold down the Shift key, use our left mouse button, and drag and create our curve. We could edit the curve, and then we press Create Inverted Model. We now have our model created from the inverted impression. We could close this, and now the process flow is going to follow the same process flow as we've seen until now. We're going to align the model to the patient CT. We're going to treatment plan, create the surgical guide, and continue from there. I'm not going to go through the entire process again so that we can continue discussing other topics in the software. Let's go ahead and cancel the wizard. And let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Let's close this. Okay. So what we discussed earlier was regarding the metal cylinders. Now the metal cylinders, as we mentioned, go into the surgical guide. They're going to go into that brown cylinder software guide tube that we have on the screen. And that becomes part of the surgical guide. And what we see on the screen on the left-hand side is we see the yellow outline, which is our model, either the optical model, the inverted impression, or the CT of the model, whatever. And on top, we see the outline of the surgical guide. There's a very slight difference between them, a very slight offset that can be controlled in the software in order to allow the surgical guide to be inserted and removed. Now, in the software, if you're not using the wizard, then you'll see the following settings in the advanced mode of the software for the metal cylinder. And this is how it all comes together, because you see the outside diameter of the metal cylinder is 5.24 millimeters. What does that mean? It means that the guide hole diameter, the hole that's going to be in the surgical guide, is 1/10 of a millimeter larger than that. The height of the printed surgical guide is 4 millimeters, slightly larger than the metal cylinder without the lip. The lip is going to be on top of that. And the offset is 8 millimeters. So essentially, we have the 8 millimeter offset, we have 1/2 millimeter of the lip, and that creates 8.5 millimeters. Now, why is that important? Here I kind of mashed up a couple of different things so that you can see the correlation, the connection between a fully guided kit and the software. So The drilling part of the drill corresponds to the implant size. Now, this is for people, again, that want to have a better understanding and want to realize how the fully guided surgical kit works together with the software. These numbers and these measurements are done, we saw in the wizard, are done automatically. Just as an explanation as an overview. The way that the fully guided surgical kit is designed is that the drilling part of the drill matches the height of the software, the height of the implant, matches the implant height. The offset, the number that we have on the bottom right for the offset, the 8 millimeters, is from the bottom. This is actually a correction here. The offset is the 8 millimeters that we see here. Okay, that's from the top of the implant to the top of the printed surgical guide. Now we have another 0.5 millimeter, which comes out to 8.5 millimeters, which is the height of the non-cutting part of the drill. It's the distance from the top of the implant until the stop, and it's the distance from the non-cutting part of the drill until the stop. So the way the fully guided surgical kit is designed is always that the cutting part of the drill matches the implant height, and 8.5 millimeters is the amount of the non-cutting part of the drill until the drill stop. And that corresponds to the height of the surgical guide from the top of the implant to the top of the metal cylinder, okay, with the lip of the metal cylinder. So that's kind of an overview of how the numbers come together. And we see that the guide tube measurements and settings appear in the bottom of the implant list. And what we've added to the software, if you're not using the wizard, if you are using the wizard, we saw there's the drop down that comes up at the beginning of the wizard. If you're not using the wizard, then in the implant list, we've integrated this drop down for the drill kit, which allows the user to choose between the direct cut drills, between the fully guided system, and between a custom kit, where you can go ahead and enter any values that you like in the guide tube section on the bottom. So let's just jump back to the software a second. Let's close this out. Okay, let's take a look at our implant list. Let's switch to advanced. And here we could see the numbers in the software. If we switch to the fully guided surgical kit, the numbers adjust automatically, and the built-in drill stops that we saw on the bottom disappear because they're not relevant for the fully guided kit. And if we switch to the direct cut drills, the numbers go back to the way they were. The built-in drill stops revert as well. We also have the parts panel and the drilling report, and those, of course, update automatically depending on whatever drilling kit you're using. So what's important to know is if you're using the wizard, at the beginning of the wizard process, you select the type of drilling kit you're going to be using. If you're not using the wizard to plan, then go ahead and from the drill kit drop down on the top of the implant list panel, select the relevant drill kit that you're going to be using. Okay. Where can I learn more? So we have a lot of different avenues and ways that you could learn more about Blue Sky Plan and guided surgery and implant placement. Blue Sky Bio offers a free 1-hour remote training. You could set that up by emailing us or calling as well. We have video training tutorials on our website. We have a lot of video training tutorials. We have a lot of recorded webinars. You could search YouTube for Blue Sky Plan, and you'll see a lot of videos created by other people as well, and clinical information. There's also a Facebook study club, which is a fantastic group, a lot of very knowledgeable and capable people really doing cutting edge techniques for guided surgery. This is an old banner of 1,000 members. I think it's over 3,500 members, and it's growing rapidly. And people there are very generous with their time, comment on cases, give their advice, discussions, opinions. You could search in Facebook for the Blue Sky Bio Academy, and that's really a great group to be part of, very educational, and very innovative. A lot of ideas that become integrated into Blue Sky Plan started out there, and were suggested there. There's also the Blue Sky Bio Academy, which is a fantastic resource, especially for clinical information and for a lot of case studies and additional information going beyond the software training tutorials. There's live courses being given by many different capable lecturers and presenters. Some of these presenters are going to be giving the webinar training sessions as well, so you have a chance of learning from them at no cost and getting CE credits as well. As I mentioned earlier, this presentation is the second presentation amongst the 2017 webinar series. So we have information on our website, and you can stay tuned for emails. In addition, we're presenting for the first time, we're going to have webinar presentations in different languages. You'll see on the schedule, and for different time zones for different countries throughout the world. So we've seen the demand and interest continue to rise, and we're providing training and information accordingly. The live courses are highly recommended. Of course, there are videos and lots of information online. I think nothing really replaces a live course, and stay tuned for that. If there are any questions, then you can go ahead and put them into the live chat box. I brought up again the slide about how to contact Blue Sky Bio and how to get more information. And just to mention again, if you go to biobigbox.com, you could register there for free, use the system for free. If you do want to upgrade, we have the webinar series discount code of BSB 2017 webinars, which will give you 50% discount on BigBox for the first 6 months. Okay, that pretty much wraps up my presentation for today. I'd like to once again thank everybody for attending, encourage you to enter your contact information in the webinar attendance form so we could send you the CE credits. And feel free to contact us with additional questions or comments.